All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another segment of Family Law Uncorked. I'm Jen Bordeaux, the Director of Public Relations with New Direction Family Law, and I'm joined today with two fabulous ladies. I have Elizabeth Stevenson, one of the partners at New Direction Family Law, and I'm also joined by Dr. Kristen Wynns of Wynns Family Psychology. Say hello, ladies.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So we know that in today's time with COVID-19 that we are all staying at home more than usual, and we are having all kinds of time to connect with our family and really try to embrace these changes. But there are some challenges that can come with that too, as I am sure you've already learned by now if you are at home with family. So we thought we would bring in Dr. Wynns to talk about some of the ways to handle that, some tips, including discussing things with a co-parent if there is another parent with the custody exchanges or a visitation, and just take it from there. So if you guys are ready, and of course, if you have any questions while you're watching this, please feel free to shoot them to us and we will do our best to answer as we are going on.
Absolutely.
So just to kick it off, and this is obviously for either one of you, but any general tips for talking to your children about COVID-19, coronavirus, and everything that's going on in the world right now?
I'll leave that to you, Dr. Wynn. That's your thing.
Yeah, I may have answered that question a few hundred times at this point, but I think it's a topic we can't really emphasize enough because each day something new is happening and the statistics are being put out there, which sound really scary. So I do think it's important to keep that door open and remind parents do's and don'ts about how to talk to their kids. One thing I've been emphasizing is to really take note of how old your kids are. And with little ones, you can kind of buffer them from the details and just keep that reassuring message that, yep, that virus is still out there. So we're just staying at home right now so we can be healthy and we're taking care of you. With older kids and definitely teens, they're absorbing so much information from friends or from their own social media that with older ones, it's important to keep the door open for conversations. But if kids are getting stressed with the what ifs and what do these numbers mean, I do encourage parents to give a message about, let's just focus on what we can control right now and being healthy and safe. And also just limiting how much you as a parent are scrolling through your feed and keeping the news on, because that can keep everybody really anxious if you're constantly hearing new numbers and feeling your heart rate jack up again. So just to keep it short and sweet and fact-based and really focus on, hey, the adults are still taking care of you. We've got our leaders who are trying their best to come up with a plan, and you still be a kid and do your school and have fun.
Right. I mean, I can speak to that, and that's very helpful. I have a 17-year-old who's home. He was at boarding school and is home, and I've noticed over the last couple of days he's just gotten quieter and quieter and quieter. And 17-year-olds, it's hard to pull things out of. So
Yeah.
I think just leaving that door open is really, really good advice, and letting them know that they can come and talk to you. So that's great. Thank you.
Right.
Awesome. You mentioned homeschooling. All
Yeah.
parents now, whether they were used to it or not, have had to transition and to become some sort of homeschooler. I only have dogs at home, so I haven't had to to cross that bridge, but that's from what I've seen and heard from my sibling and sister-in-law, that they have a child that they've had to transition, and several families across the country and the globe, really. In doing that as a parent, especially if you're not used to it, that can be a massive, massive change on top of everything else. So what advice or tips would you, aside from, putting the wine down, would you give in transitioning to becoming a homeschooler now?
Yeah, I was going to mention the last time I did the Uncorked talk with you guys, we were live in your office and we actually had corks and wine. So this is kind of a bummer. We're stuck at home with our green tea right now, I guess.
Yeah.
So in our house, we're living that. So we have two teenagers, a junior in high school and an 8th grader. Never, ever, ever thought we would sign up for homeschooling, but here we are. So the two things that I keep coming back to are routine it's critical. I mean, the first week we were all just reeling with it and thinking, surely this isn't going to last. But now we know, yes, it's going to last. So to have a nice routine and schedule, we actually took the opportunity to post a chalkboard in our mudroom, and I got to play teacher and have my really good handwriting to write out our girls' schedule for the day. But that has worked so well, where they're really in the new routine where they have their learning time. And right now, at least in North Carolina, we're in a little bit of a flux where the schools haven't officially sent over assignments yet. So even if your kids don't have official assignments, we've given our kids the option to hop on the website so you can take virtual tours of museums, go on virtual field trips, hop on Khan Academy, which is a really cool resource, and also pay attention to your kids' interests. Like we have one of ours is artistic. So we signed her up for a coding class, which she's doing during her learning time. And then the other one is a writer. So we're having her find different magazines or contests to submit writing to. So to have a schedule with learning time, chores, exercise, whatever else your family wants with like quiet time or doing something good for the world, but to have it all spelled out and then have free time, I think really helps parents keep their sanity. But it also reassures the kids, because whether they would admit it or not, they still want to have a little structure in their day. It makes them feel more secure.
Absolutely. And that leads into, even under, I hate to use the word intact families, but parents who are still together, it's stressful. I mean, and that's an understatement. But then you throw into the mix kids who have two separate households because their parents are either separated or divorced. That makes it even doubly, triply, quadruply, exponentially more stressful for them. And I think what we've heard is, as best you can, keep the routine for them. If you exchange on Wednesdays, continue to exchange on Wednesdays and that sort of thing. So you had sent over a really good list of sort of a list of what parents can do. And I think this relates really well to co-parenting if you have two separate households. And your first one that you talked about was first the basics. And what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so really the basics even of kind of taking care of your kids and yourself from a health perspective. So even more important, if you are actually exchanging kids back and forth, to really be following all the protocols with washing your hands and washing your clothes and keeping that social distancing. That also will help for the co-parents to be on the same page about expectations for kids socializing. I know even just from talking to my circle of family and friends, parents interpret it very different ways. So some are still letting kids have sleepovers and hang outside far apart, and some are saying, no, we're not going into anyone else's house, period, and no one is coming into ours. So the basics also with you and your co-parent to say, okay, what are we doing for our kids' social lives and being able to go out? And that will also help with friction, but also with hopefully minimizing any kind of exposure to the virus.
Right. And I've tried to sort of coach clients on don't do it in sort of a, you need to do this, or why didn't you do that? But couch it in what's in the best interest of the kids. And it's like, for all of us, and to keep our kids safe, to tone down some of the animosity can be helpful too, if we can remember to put the kids first. Your second one,
that's right.
Yeah, the second one is be compliant, and this is where it gets a little tricky sometimes. Be compliant with court orders and custody agreements. So talk about that a little bit from your perspective and a psychologist.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating, especially to be in your field where historically parents probably might sometimes look for nefarious reasons to switch out the schedule or to get away with keeping a kid longer or whatever. And now we've literally got a worldwide crisis that is a pretty valid excuse for possibly tweaking things. But I think it's important, if both families are healthy, to still maintain that schedule and try to respect it and not kind of use this as an opportunity to try to manipulate or, start trouble. If there's ever a time for co-parents to say, hey, let's just focus on, we're fortunate we've got our kids are healthy and that we're still having a plan that we can follow, and just try to stick to the positives and not use it as a time to stir up extra stress.
Right. And I will say that the governor's order and Wake County order both provide that custody exchanges specifically are essential travel. Now, there may be
That's right.
right. There may be some issue about, oh, we've got to go, flying somewhere or going out of state or something like that may be another issue. But then I would say definitely talk to your attorney about that before you make any decisions. I think they can help you in that way. This is one of my favorites. I love this. Also, be creative. And so I like that. So yeah, we have this order and it says, here's what we're supposed to do, but co-parents can co-parent and figure out ways that work for their family.
That's right. So, I mean, like you just referenced, parents may need to get creative even with exchanging kids if they had their same old way and their same old mode of transportation or where they would meet, and maybe those aren't options now. But also, depending on the schedule, one parent might have heavily relied on going out for their scheduled time with their kids to go to movies and restaurants and bowling alleys. So even having to be creative with saying, okay, well, now you can't go out anywhere. What are we going to do? So to really think outside of the box with ways to still keep the kids engaged and having fun. But also creativity with, if somebody, I know a lot of families now are struggling with, even with job schedules changing or with loss of job or needing to work extra hours. So even flexibility there, if a parent is tied up because maybe they are in the medical field and they have to work more hours, to be flexible and say, hey, sure, stay at work, do your thing, and we'll give you those extra hours when you have your 36 hours off or whatever. So just really trying to continuously come back to working together, which is going to feed into the kids doing better because they're out of sorts anyway. So if parents can stay focused on that message, it'll go a long way.
Right. And, a lot of orders have been, one parent would have a Wednesday night dinner or they'd pick them up from soccer practice. And Oregon has put out a really good guidelines. We haven't done this yet, but it says that they say this is school time. It's not a holiday, it's not vacation. So if you're supposed to pick them up after school, but they're not going to school, you still pick them up at the same time. You may have to change where you pick them up, but let's keep it as normal, as possible as we can for the kids. So I think that you and I are on the same page on that. And
Absolutely.
I love this is hard for parents sometimes is to be transparent. What do you mean by that?
Right. So, well, that actually translates a few ways. So one, there is a tendency, and I've heard this, from anecdotal examples again, where if people start to have symptoms, then they want to try to hide them and say, oh, I'm sure it's just allergies. I'm sure it's just a sinus infection. But especially, again, if you're having your children go back and forth, it's really important to be transparent and say, okay, just to let you know, he's had sniffles. He seemed a little feverish last night. We think it's allergies, but just want to tell you, and then let the other parent decide, okay, send him over, sounds okay, or why don't you hold on to him for a few more days and just watch. So really to be transparent about your symptoms as an adult, other people in your home, and then your child. And then the other part of that with being transparent, I think, is a proactive approach. So if they haven't already, definitely now write up a plan that says, okay, if either home has possible COVID-19 or suspected, here's what we're going to do as, co-parenting families, and have it all spelled out. So if that happens, instead of freaking out, you can just say, okay, we've got a plan for this. Let's look at bullet point number 1 and then just follow the plan.
I like that. The other issue is we also have the issue of parents who have remarried. So we not only have this set of family, but we have another set of family with another set of kids coming back and forth. I don't know if you've had any issues or thought about what are ways that we can sort of alleviate those fears too. Maybe the same advice.
It's the same advice, but yes, I mean, if you really try to draw out a map of the possible family units who might be hit, in this day and age, you can have multiple families who have kids exchanging or going back and forth. So I think the more people involved, the more imperative it is to have something spelled out with that transparency and say, okay, even if it's your new wife's kids who come once a month from over here, then still have expectations set with exposure and guidelines.
Jen, I'll let you take it over.
So she has a human child and a doggy child in her house.
Yeah, she has a couple of doggy children. That's great advice. And I'll kind of circle back because we did have a question up here. And you mentioned a little bit about this, so maybe you can expand on it a little bit or just reiterate what you already said. But
Sure.
I've muted Elizabeth, so when she comes back, I'll unmute her. But the question is, what if a parent is worried about the other parent's ability to keep up with the homeschooling and keep the children safe when they're together? Do you have any advice on how to discuss those concerns without fighting?
That's a really good question. So yeah, we didn't merge the homeschooling with the co-parenting exactly. So I would say my advice about having a very specific schedule. Again, I give this advice anyway for two house families, is to try to replicate the same routine and schedule mostly. So we all know it's unrealistic for bedtime and meal time to be precisely the same minute. But if you've got a really nice homeschool schedule and resources, and you're the type A one and you've got it all written up, then share that with the other parent and say, hey, this is working really well for us. Do you want to try to give it a shot, or do you have ideas or revisions to kind of make it be a two-way conversation? But again, as much as they can kind of have the same expectations, then they'll have that peace of mind to know the child's still getting his or her needs met, but also reduce any kind of animosity between the parents.
And would you say in that scenario, so let's say you've got the parent who's type A, and then the parent who's not quite so type A, or isn't even type
Yeah.
B, who knows?
Yeah.
Would your advice be in those situations? Because type A obviously really wants to be able to control and know that they're getting the same schedule and the same care and homeschooling and everything at the other parent's house. Would your advice at that point to say, hey, you can't 100% control or no? You need to base off your reserve that how they're being cared for when they're with you and you're following that schedule, and then to just trust that other parent has their best interest at heart.
Oh yeah, and I would also add that for any of us type A parents or parents who just really want our kids to succeed, this semester, let's say, is just a really tough one for us to all kind of realize there may be not as much learning or as much to show for it as far as grades go. And that's really stressful if you like to see the assignments completed and the grades. But I think if there's ever a time for parents to just look at the big picture and say, okay, he may not be learning and progressing as much this semester, and maybe watching more TV and more YouTube and more video games than we normally allow. But some of that, I think we just need to embrace and say that flexibility in our mindset is going to get us through, and know that on the other end, you can try to get back on track and make up for lost time. But most kids are not going to suffer if they've had a bad week or a bad month, or maybe at one house, they're not getting as rigid of learning time. So yes, to try to replicate that schedule, but also have kind of some grace to say, all right, well, if the other home just isn't able or willing to do that, you can still control what goes on in your house and look at the big picture, that this period of time, all of us are going to have to accept that some of the normal academic gains just aren't made, at least right now.
Right. And I will say that, we go into it that the courts, especially if they've done a custody schedule, believe that each parent has the best interest of the child at heart. And they always say, when they're with that parent, they're with that parent. And you can't, unless somebody's getting hurt or it's an abuse situation or something like that, you just got to let that go. But I think the standard is a little higher when we come to what we should be doing regarding the virus. But as you say about the schedule, if they're not following, and then you just got to, give it up to your higher power, and let it be, and know the kids are resilient and that they're going to get through this, and we're all going to get through this. And you may just have to take a breath and step back a little bit.
Well said. Yes, could not agree more.
Yeah.
Looking at the kids themselves, I mean, we're talking about, the homeschooling of the kids and communicating with the other parent, but looking at your children themselves, what advice, or maybe, would you have with the restlessness that all of us, but especially kids, are undoubtedly going to feel of not having that in-person peer interaction or the ability to just go out or go to their soccer practice or whatever, extracurricular activities. I mean, the longer this goes on, obviously, the more restlessness is going to be. So what would you say to that, Dr. Wynns?
Yeah. Okay. Two things. One, I cannot say enough about getting outside every day and exercising for parents and kids. I mean, that's been a lifesaver for us. My husband and I have probably worn out our shoes from how much we've taken just a quick walk around the neighborhood to get air, and our kids are doing it too. So exercise and sunshine and fresh air helps with that restlessness, to go outside. And we've thrown the frisbee for the first time in years in our backyard. And it's really neat to walk through the neighborhood and see parents and kids doing foursquare and badminton. I mean, that's, I think, some silver linings of this virus. It's actually really neat that people are joining together as a family and being active in ways they haven't before. So getting outside is a big one. The other one that I think is a silver lining for this virus that I'm enjoying kind of brainstorming is to really, as a family, talk about some things you always wanted to do that you've never had time to do, and kind of have like your weekly list or your month list for fun things you want to try. So short list, even for, in my mind, is I want to learn how to make fresh pasta. Never done that before. I want to look at the Duolingo app and look at learning a new language. There's new novels you can start. You can start a new exercise routine from finding videos online. So many ideas of things you always say, oh, I wish we could do that. So I think it's fun to have a family meeting and say, okay, guys, what's your one new thing for the week that you're going to try, and something new, or what kind of resources do you need from us to help you? But have fun with it and try to find something every single day that you can look forward to. So that doesn't have to be something new, but I'm really a big fan of having one thing every day that the family can look forward to, or you as an adult can look forward to. So again, it can be small, trying a new recipe, having a virtual happy hour with your friends, taking a bubble bath, just something new, planting something in your garden, something new that kind of makes these long days have a little something fun to look forward to.
And I want to ask Dr. Wynn to follow up on that. In my neighborhood, I still see groups of kids, together. And my child sees, well, why can't I? I mean, what do you say to a child when that age, when they think they're invincible? That, I understand that you want to be with your friends, but what comes after the but? What would you advise parents to say about that?
That's a hard one. Yeah, especially if they can see around them the other parents are being more like, that's the story of my life. I'm the no Winty parent mom. So my whole kid's life, they're like, why can't we? Why do we have a bedtime? Why do we have to eat vegetables? So, I mean, I think, first of all, I didn't say this a while ago, but first of all, you can encourage your kids to be creative with connecting with friends digitally. I mean, even my neighbor told me your preferences. I still think there's something to be said for teenagers walking together, if they're truly walking, with that good social distancing.
Right.
I think it's a little different if they're playing like basketball. That's kind of advised that's more close contact. But getting them to be creative. We did that with our daughter, who was going crazy missing her best friend, and we said, hey, you can take a walk outside as long as y'all stay apart and don't go in her house. And that was actually a great time for them to reconnect.
That's right. And speaking of alternates and how to have conversations and be together, talk a little bit about, okay, let's say you can't go to the other parent's house. What are some innovative ways that you can still be connected to that parent that you're not able to see?
Yeah, some of the ones we talked about with friends are great for parents too. So, I mean, it's amazing we have technology, thank goodness. So to do FaceTime calls with the other parent, or, depending on the age of the kids, they might enjoy doing a Snapchat call where you can do all the crazy filters as you talk to the parent, or hang out, meet on Google. I mean, there's so many ways that they can connect, and even getting creative. Like I shockingly just got pulled into TikTok with the rest of the world for my teenager. And she and I are doing dances together,
I love
which is fun. But even if you weren't in the same house with the parents, you know, you could jump on board that and do silly videos and send them back and forth to each other, just knowing kind of what kids are into and using that as your medium to communicate and have fun still, even like play. I think that's a lot of opportunities out there for parents to do that.
Those are great ideas. Great ideas.
Yeah, there's also my nephew has connected with me on this. There's a Messenger Kids on Facebook. Yeah. And so, you know, you can set a lot of parameters and everything. So I think that's really neat. I think that's how he's been able to communicate and connect with some of he's 9. So it's how he's been connecting with some of his classmates and friends, which is huge. And I like that Facebook has that option. So just another option for parents out there and kids.
Yeah, that's a good one. I just discovered that too. I think that's a great one that has more safeguards than just normal Facebook Messenger.
And Dr. Wynns, this is a really stressful time for parents, and those that you already have on board, that's great. But I'm assuming y'all are still taking clients because this is stressful, and we may have recommendations to send to you. Are you doing tele sessions or whatever, however you say that?
Yeah, both. So we're definitely doing a lot of telepsych, which is so cool. We have several platforms that we can choose from to do HIPAA compliant, very private sessions, and our clients are really embracing that so nicely. So it's easy. We send them a link, they hop on, they put in their earbuds sometimes so they can have privacy. We're wearing ours, and it's been going really well. But we did just open back up this week for limited in-person sessions. So sometimes for various reasons, people just need to be seen face-to-face, whether it's the severity of what they're going through, or for little ones, or for some testing cases. There's still some of that has to happen. So we're trying to be creative with having limited in office and 1,000 precautions that we've put in place to keep everybody safe and healthy. But yeah, now more than ever, people are stressed and anxious and worried, and we're happy to be able to still be a resource to folks who need some extra help.
How did they get hold of you, Dr. Wynn? And you have more than one office. You guys are everywhere, so you're pretty convenient for people.
Yeah. So we have 3 locations now. So we have Cary, North Raleigh, and Greensboro. And Cary and Greensboro are still open for the in-office appointments at this time. But yeah, people can find us on our website. That we're also so our website is wynnspsychology.com. But I'm also putting a ton of resources on our Wynns Family Psychology Facebook page. Good. A lot of the media type interviews like this, giving tips to people, and blogs and videos. So following us at Wynns Family Psychology on Facebook, or I'm starting in with my now weekly videos for No Wimpy Parenting. And people can also follow No Wimpy Parenting on Instagram.
Oh, that's great. Good.
But no matter how much you guys beg me, I'm not going to give you my TikTok handle because I don't want people going to find my video.
We will find you.
Jen will find it. I can guarantee you that.
You probably will. So get ready to be impressed.
Yeah, actually, I haven't joined the TikTok craze yet. I don't even know what I would do, but I feel like if I joined, I would figure out something, and then I would not get anything else done. But I think that's awesome that you and your daughter are doing. That's great.
Yeah.
So, Jen, do we have any more questions?
No, we haven't at this time. If I have any follow-up questions, I'll definitely follow up with those and get answers to those. But other than that, I really appreciate you joining us today. And
so helpful.
Safe and healthy and sanitized and sane and all that good stuff.
You're here. Yeah, thank you guys. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Have a good afternoon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.